All right, everybody. I am back. Good to be back. Good to be back. I do want to switch gears and frankly talk about the big late breaking story, breaking news in college football on Sunday afternoon, right as the NFL kicked off. We got ourselves a little bit of a college football bombshell that maybe it was a bombshell, maybe it wasn't, but the first piece of the college football coaching carousel is officially underway as Scott Frost, after 4+ years, this was his 5th year, 3 games in, he is fired as the head coach at Nebraska. And as we found out, according to the AD, Trev Alberts, Mickey Joseph is now the interim head coach, wide receivers coach, well-respected recruiter, all that good stuff. Listen, what I would say about this, we're going to get to candidates in the future and all this and all that. I do think the job is now better probably than it was 4 or 5 years ago. Before we get into all that, though, let me just say a couple things. One, the timing of this was both very surprising and not surprising at all. It was very surprising from the sense that Nebraska actually reworked Scott Frost's contract so that his buyout would be cut in half on October 1st. So you fire him after October 1, midnight on October 1. It's a $7.5 million buyout. You fire him before that. It was a $15 million buyout. And obviously, look, we've talked about it on this show. The reason that they made that decision was to put in position a place where Scott Frost had a real opportunity this year to start with a clean slate and succeed, but for Nebraska to move quickly if he was not the right guy. So on one hand, this was a little bit of a surprising firing just because of the timing of it. But I'll also say, I don't think it was surprising at all, right? I was on air on Fox Sports Radio during that Georgia Southern game. And that's just the type of game you can't come back from it. Not in year 5, not after last offseason where you were given a reprieve, given the opportunity to come back, rework your staff, rework your roster, hit the portal hard, use NIL to your advantage. You can't lose to Georgia Southern 2 weeks after you lost to Northwestern. And you certainly can't do it in the manner in which they did. 642 yards of total offense Nebraska gave up. Over 7 yards per carry, over 7 yards per completion. And it was crazy because I was on air during the game. Nebraska took the lead. I guess it would have been 42-38 with about 3 minutes to go. And we joked on air, you left Georgia Southern too much time. We're, of course, talking about Georgia Southern, coached by Clay Helton, of all people, in his first year. Clay Helton fired in week 2 last year at USC, now leads to the firing of Scott Frost this week. And coming out of that game, I'll just be honest. On the one hand, I did think he would probably survive till October 1st. They play Nebraska, they play Oklahoma this weekend, then they have a bye, then they play on October 1st against Indiana. I thought he'd survive till that weekend, probably be let go afterward. But whether it was today, whether it was October 1, whether it was October 10, when you lose to Georgia Southern in year 5, there's just no coming back from it. So I'm not surprised at all. Ultimately, what I would say before we get to kind of the future of the program, I do want to quickly say I think it's a sad ending for Scott Frost, man. I don't know him personally. I know I shouldn't feel bad. He just got paid $15 million to go away. But at the same time, this is a guy that is, as tied in with that program as anyone that I could ever imagine, right? From Nebraska. The story, he's a high school legend in Nebraska. He was coached by both of his parents. The dad was the head coach. The mom was the assistant coach. And so my guess is plays at Nebraska, wins a national championship, goes to the NFL. When he gets back into coaching, my guess is there's probably only one job that he really wanted. And you could go back and find the clips of him accepting the job back in 2017 on YouTube. I think we all thought it would be a success. And I do feel bad. I know he's getting $15 million to go away, but to fail at a job that was your dream job so spectacularly, so publicly in your home state, I do feel bad. I also do feel like the timing was right. Listen, if you guys and girls have listened to this podcast, you know where I stand on Nebraska. I was happy that Scott Frost got the extra year. I watched all the games last year, 3-9, 9 losses by 9 points or less. I'm glad the school decided to give him one more chance. But after the Northwestern game, when you lose in the same manner, the same fashion that you have lost all of these other games through all of these other years, I just said, look, I can't feel bad for you anymore, man. You had the offseason. Again, you reworked your coaching staff. You go to Dublin as a double-digit favorite, and you lose to Northwestern. And so Scott Frost is gone. Maybe at another point we'll reflect on what went wrong and all that. But I think most people on a day like today, they care about the future of the program. And what I would say about the future of Nebraska football, maybe I'm crazy, right? And for people who don't know me, don't know who I am, listening to me for the first time, I'm not a Nebraska alum. I'm not a Nebraska fan. I've been to the stadium. It's a great venue, great site. Lincoln's a beautiful town. But I just bring it up to say I have no affiliation with Nebraska other than to say I do think, thanks to the changes in college football, and I said this after the Northwestern game as well. Thanks to the changes in college football, I do believe that this job is a better job than it was even 3-4 years ago, let alone probably 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago in the world of college football. I believe that because of the expanded playoff. I believe that because of NIL. I believe because of the transfer portal. Listen, a couple things stand out to me when I think about the present and future of Nebraska. First of all, people in the media, you got to stop criticizing Nebraska fans. I have dealt with a lot of Nebraska fans through the years. I haven't talked to a single one that thinks 1994 is coming back, that thinks they are going to win multiple national championships in a short amount of time. But at the same time, if you look at the changing landscape of college football, I do think it's realistic for this program to be really good and reasonably fast with the right coach. Just think about it like this. Think about what the transfer portal can do for a place like Nebraska. And again, I mentioned it a few weeks ago. Look at the roster that they had on the field on Saturday night. The starting quarterback, a transfer from Texas. Their top wide receiver, a transfer from Texas. Their second best receiver, a transfer from LSU. They have a safety from Alabama. They have a defensive end from TCU who was all conference in the Big 12, and everybody, including Texas, including everybody wanted him. He ends up in Nebraska. So you think about what Scott Frost going into a make or break year with a revamped coaching staff did in the portal this year. Think about what a coach on solid footing with a solid game plan with plenty of time to build a roster can actually do in that thing. I think Nebraska has a chance to be really good. And I think also the NIL aspect will help. We talked about it a few days ago. They have the kid, DeColdis Crawford. That is his name. He had a commercial that was very viral, very public with a heating and cooling company for DeColdis Crawford. And so I bring it up because the NIL opportunities are there. We all know that in Nebraska, everybody in Nebraska is rowing in the same direction. They want this program to succeed. I believe that Nebraska has the loyalist fan base in college football. They continue to sell out that stadium after all these years. And I do believe that in the new world of college football, with the portal and with NIL and with the 12-team playoff, you mean to tell me this team cannot be the third best team in the Big Ten every couple of years and make the playoff as an at-large, as an 11, a 12, a 9 seed? Come on now. And so that's why I think that this job is already better than it was even 4 or 5 years ago, and why I think it will attract some really good candidates when it's open. Again, you mean to tell me that the right guy can't get this team to whatever, 9, 10, 11 wins every once in a while, and every once in a while compete for third place in the Big Ten? If Wisconsin can do it, if Iowa can win 10 games, go to the Big Ten championship game last year, Nebraska can do it, and they can certainly do it here in the transfer portal era, where I do believe geography in recruiting is less important than it was, again, a few years ago. So with that said, let's get to some names that I think everybody is going to be intrigued by in terms of the future of this program. And it's interesting. I think the first name that jumps out to me is a guy that was coaching on Sunday when all of this went down. His name is Matt Rhule. He is the head coach of the Carolina Panthers, and he is very much not in a very good place right now with the Carolina Panthers. He is entering year 3. He obviously has a college background. I think everybody knows that. But went 5-11 last year, 5-12 the year, or 5-11 in his first year, 5-12 the year before. He enters year 3. He's got to win games. He's got to win games big. And here's the bottom line. He's not going to, because I don't believe he has elite quarterback play in Baker Mayfield. And I love Baker Mayfield. I wish him nothing but the best. But at the end of the day, we've seen who Baker Mayfield is, even healthy. And he's a guy that could barely get a team into the playoffs when he had elite defensive line play, elite run play, elite wide receivers, all that stuff. So now you're telling me that going to Carolina under Matt Rhule, he's somehow going to turn it around without all that? I just don't see it. I think Matt Rhule's out after this year. And I think Matt Rhule is the guy that probably makes the most sense in terms of a real high-profile candidate for Nebraska. Now, for those of you who maybe have forgotten over the last couple of years, and if you have, I forgive you. The world's a crazy place. There's a lot that's happened. But while Matt Rhule is not working at all at the NFL level, I mean, this guy has a track record of being really good in college, right? I mean, first of all, was really successful at Temple. He ends up going to Baylor. I thought it was a weird cultural fit when he decided to go. Remember, Baylor was coming off all that crazy Art Briles scandal. Matt Rhule was legitimately awesome when he got to Baylor. Wasn't from Texas, had no ties to Texas. to his credit, he built a strong staff, including Joey McGuire, who's now the head coach at Texas Tech, and they completely overhauled that team. Went 1-11 in year one. I think people forget this. By year three, not year six, not year five, year three, they were 11-1 and playing for a Big 12 title. Nearly beat Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game. They beat Oklahoma. They are competing to go to the college football playoff. They lose to Oklahoma. They lose in the Sugar Bowl to Georgia, but they finished 11-3 before Matt Rhule left for the NFL. And so I think you bring that guy to Nebraska with all the resources that they have, with the facilities, with the transfer portal, with NIL where it is right now. I'm telling you, that guy is going to succeed, because if he succeeded at Baylor in the mess that he inherited from Art Briles, I have no reason to think he can't do the same in Nebraska. Now, I understand Texas, Baylor has a little bit of a better recruiting base in Texas than Nebraska has in the Midwest there. But again, for the 5th time, the 10th time, give that guy the transfer portal and NIL. I think he's going to be really successful. Let's keep it going. Two guys I think in the Midwest that make a lot of sense out of the Big 12. One is Matt Campbell. And listen, I know Matt Campbell, guys like me and people in the media throw his name around all the time. I get all that. But at the same time, what I would sit there and say about Matt Campbell is I do see a scenario where I get that he's been good but not great at Iowa State. First of all, we need to acknowledge that he has been better at Iowa State than literally anybody in the modern era. They are coming off 5 straight bowl games, something that has never happened in school history. They had 9 wins 2 years ago. He's putting players in the league, Breece Hall's in the league, all that stuff. And he's doing it in a place that it's really hard to do. Iowa State is probably maybe, in the current Big 12, the 9th to 10th best job in the Big 12. All the same problems that Nebraska has without all of the resources and history and everything that Nebraska has. Iowa State has the same problems. Limited recruiting base, limited ability to get guys there. If Matt Campbell can build a 9-win program at Iowa State, why can't he build a team that can compete for a playoff berth at Nebraska? Now, a couple things stand out. One, I think on a positive with Matt Campbell, why I like that consideration for a hire so much. And by the way, I should mention with Matt Campbell too, this is a guy that won 9 games a few years ago, has won consistently in the Big Ten. Never forget, he is a guy, by the way, who is doing it with less talent than some of the teams in his league. He beat Oklahoma a few years ago. Oklahoma certainly has more talent than him. He's beaten Texas a few times. Texas has more talent than him. So now let him go to Nebraska, let him have the opportunity to build a program there. I think he has a chance to be really good. I would only say the real downside to him, obviously we saw it on Saturday when they barely beat Iowa in a crazy low-scoring game. It is a scenario, I will say. I would think that they would want to talk to him a little bit about the style of play. Like, okay, we're going to allow you to recruit a little bit of a better caliber of player here. We need you to be a little bit more interesting. That would be my only concern, is a little bit on style of play. But Matt Campbell's a guy that I think is going to get a call. If you can build a consistent 8-win program, sometimes 9-win program at Iowa State, I believe you can build a 10 to 11-win program at Nebraska. I don't want to say no problem, but I think it can be done. Another guy that, I don't know that he would have been a candidate 24 hours ago, but I think you seriously got to consider him. Lance Leipold at Kansas, okay? So Kansas, for people who missed it, in year 2 for this guy, remember, he came in last year after spring practice, okay? Spring practice ends, Les Miles gets fired, all their best players transfer. He comes in after spring practice, still manages to get the team to the 2-win mark. They win at Texas. Now entering year 2 with a full offseason, what does he do? He starts 2-0 for the first time since 2011, beats West Virginia on Saturday. I believe it was at West Virginia. I wasn't able to catch much of the game as I was doing Fox Sports Radio. He gets a win over West Virginia. And now you look at that team. I'm not saying they're beating Oklahoma or Baylor or Texas tomorrow, but you mean to tell me Kansas might not be a 4- or 5-win team this year? Why not go consider that guy? Why not go get that guy? And again, the other thing to keep in mind with him, this is a guy that has built a national championship caliber program at the lower levels. How about this? 6 national titles at the D3 level at Wisconsin Whitewater in 8 years. So those are some of the names that kind of first jump out to me with Nebraska. And I would say a couple other things. One, I've heard a little Jamie Chadwell, the Coastal Carolina coach. He has been on the Aaron Torres podcast before. That offense, I think, would be electric at Nebraska. But what I would also say is a few things. One, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the name that you all want me to mention, and that's Urban Meyer. And what I'll say, I already did a whole segment on Urban Meyer in Nebraska after Dan Patrick dropped that little nugget, if you will. I don't think it was a bombshell. I think it was more of a pseudo report. But what I said about Urban Meyer is, look, I know that he's this guy right now that seems unhirable. I get all that. At the same time, what I would also say about Urban Meyer, and I think this is important, he's 58 years old. He's left coaching 3 times. Well, 2 times. He's left coaching 3 times, and the previous 2, he has absolutely come back. This guy is someone who seems like he is only fulfilled by being on the sideline, only fulfilled by having a whistle on his neck. And we've seen him do TV twice. He doesn't want to do it. And I have no inside information on how happy he is, he doesn't want to do TV. He wants to be a coach. He's 13 years younger than Nick Saban. You mean to tell me he doesn't have one more run in him? I believe that he does. The question is, would it be at a place like Nebraska? Now, again, Nebraska in a 12-team playoff era. Can you win at a high level at Nebraska? I believe that you can. And I believe that at the very least, Urban Meyer in the coming years, whether it's Nebraska this year, whether it's someone else down the road, 2 things. He's going to listen to job opportunities. And I believe at some point somebody is going to hire him. You can talk about all the baggage, how he left Florida, how he left Ohio State. At the end of the day, there's like 7 dudes walking the earth that have won a national championship in college football. 5 of them are coaching right now. 1 is Coach O. 1 is Les Miles. I don't think either of those guys is very hireable at this exact moment. And the other one is Urban Meyer. And you can criticize Urban Meyer for that. The guy has won 3 national championships at 2 schools. At some point, he is going to take another job. I'm guessing it's probably not Nebraska, but I truly believe that he is going to take this job. And what I would finally say is, I think if last year's coaching cycle taught us anything, it's that in this era with this much money and also this much pressure at other schools, I don't think any guy is completely off the list. Now, some guys logically, just because of buyouts and money and this and that, they are. But you look at last year, who would have thought that Lincoln Riley would ever leave Oklahoma? Who would have thought that Brian Kelly would ever leave Notre Dame? And I'm not saying USC and LSU are I'm not saying Nebraska is as good of a job as LSU. What I am saying, though, is you got to make these calls because you never know who could be interested. But when I look at Nebraska, I see a program that, as I said a minute ago, I do believe they're going to get a better candidate than than I think a lot of people expect. If you like this video, do me a quick favor. Please make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube channel. New episodes dropping Monday through Friday. We drop clips every day. If you enjoy this show, click subscribe, comment, like, do all the things that help us. We really do appreciate it. And I will be back full episode on Monday. Aaron Torres Sports Podcast.